work well. But it's not sustainable across generations for the majority of people. As inspiring as it is. And probably that's exactly why it's inspiring, because in our heart we know we cannot fulfill that model fully. Socialism, on the other side, has an issue with motivation. While religion is brilliant at motivating you, socialism is really, really crappy at it. It doesn't keep your motivation going for what is creativity and profit generation. So it doesn't work simply because the profit generation then is no longer effective enough. That we have experienced the hard way. So this is the moral quality and strength of business, which doesn't mean that we are an ethical organization by definition as a business. It just means that there are some elements of what we do that are real improvements in the environment we act upon. So where does it leave us? I told you, I would not give you a model, I would not give you a solution. I would just try to make sure you agree with me that this is an important question. It leaves us with a lot of complexity. There are principles drawn from normative ethics. There are utilities, which are very legitimate, advantages, positive consequences for people involved. And we all want to maximize positive consequences. And there are also rules. And sometimes the rules conflict with the principles. Or sometimes the rules actually reflect principles but have a lot of negative consequences and are really impacting in a harmful way people in the practicality. And you're stuck in the middle of all of this. And you have to take decisions. I would not know where to drive if I would find those signs on the road. And probably this is the best description of the ethical challenges you're facing. Like somebody said here, the globalization is even putting into question whether we have universal ethical principles or not. It's hotly debated. Certainly the religious camps argues not, because it allows them to protect the particularity of each religion. Other camps will argue, yes, definitely. You ask a UN official, he'll definitely tell you, of course, there are universal principles. And ethics can only be universal by definition, because they're really a normative ethical organization inspired by that. So I promised to you I would look at the ethical challenges of our industry. Now, there are plenty. I will only list a few. Exemplary. Also because they exemplify some of the dilemmas. And I will not give you any sense of what a solution might be. Those are ongoing problems. Those are problems you most likely will encounter when you get out of here. And your decision, again, your decision matters. Because your decision contributes to critical mass. It contributes to change. Or not to change, which sometimes could be wiser. Who knows? So let's look. Black money, or money under the table. Huge problem, particularly in the restaurant industry. I invested in a startup that developed a program for cash registers. I was convinced this is a problem only of single-unit restaurant operators. Through cash register operators, I discovered that there are even chains in Northern Europe, not in Southern Europe, chains that buy cash registers with black money modules on it. Okay? Chains, corporate businesses. This is a classic case of market pressure, of why it's not easy to take the right choice and not buy labor with black money under the table. Why? Because you know well that some additional service in our industry can give you an immediate competitive advantage. And if you can buy that service at 50% the cost because you're excluding an expensive state, you're getting yourself a major competitive advantage. And some businesses actually need this to preserve all the other legal jobs. Some businesses might choose to only hand out black money bonuses, but it's still black money. But there is a tremendous market pressure in there. Imagine a city with 1,000 restaurants and 800 use 20–30% of labor paid black. So they save a significant chunk of money. That could be 100 to 200,000 euros per restaurant per year. That's not little money. You want to run your restaurant, you open it, you have employees who are used to be paid a black money bonus. You tell them, no, I pay you legally. And he's getting only half of what he's getting from the other restaurant. You cannot retain a good employee like that. And if you want to pay him exactly what he gets net at the other restaurant, you're sustaining double the cost. And the customer is not going to understand if you're going to put on the menu, my filet costs 30 euros because I'm actually paying all of my employees correctly. Okay? Next day you will be sued because you're implying that your competitors are acting illegally. So you're exposed to a tremendous market pressure. This happens every time when an illegal action gives you a clear competitive advantage and you have a competitive market with a lot of actors using this tool. Then what happens is that the benefit ends up with the customer. When the benefit of an illegality ends up with the customer, it's really tough to get out. Because the only way to get out is to raise prices. So the restaurant market is really stuck. You know, we think the US is better. You know how many of the big chains are franchised in the US? All of them. 50 to 80% of the locations of the big chains are franchise businesses. And the main reason to do it is if I'm a brand owner, I like to delegate this, right? I'm not doing it. My franchisees will. I have programs in place to tell them not to do it, but I'm very happy for them to do it because I know that keeps them in business. Development. If you go into hotel development, you're going to develop into some of those dark red countries. This is a map by Transparency International in Berlin. The darker the place, the higher the perception of corruption. Who decides if on a lot of land you can build a hotel or you have to build a kindergarten? Tell me? Who decides? Typically it's a city official. It's not state government, it's local government. And in countries like those, you know, like Italy, I don't even pick on other countries, let's pick on my own country. In countries like those, a mayor is paid 2,000 euros a month. And typically it's not necessarily some of the wealthiest or smartest citizens. Actually, quite the opposite. Huh? What's the temptation for a mayor to say, you know, honey, you're so nice, you're going to get the hotel and you're going to get the kindergarten, I'm sorry. What's the difference in value and property? Huge. Honey can invite me for dinner and perhaps send me for a trip or even give me some cash. It doesn't cost him a lot at this point. You are going to be confronted with this. If you do development, they will ask you this. You can find the map online. Just Google Transparency International. They are very transparent. They have a lot of information. Now, this is a classic case of individual irrelevance. You know, in the black money case, if I as a single restaurant decide not to pay out the money and to try to develop a concept that's positioned higher and therefore get a higher premium and therefore get out of that trap, I might be affecting the whole market. At least there is one less doing it, right? Perhaps an intermediate step is I'm doing less of it. And the next step is I'm doing none of it. And I'm slowly changing the market. In this case, it's quite awful, because if Hani is not paying the mayor is going to get the money from this nice gentleman. So it's not Marriott opening, but it's going to be Hilton. For the mayor, it doesn't change. It changes a lot for Hani, right? So his decision, he feels irrelevant in this case, because he perfectly well knows the corruption is going on regardless of what he's going to say or do. The only thing that changes is whether he is going to meet his numbers or he is. Whether he is going to stand up at the next industry conference being, applauded by everybody, or he is. That's the only difference in that moment. So you really feel individually irrelevant. If I don't do it, others will do. I can't really change. It's an awful trap to be in. That's why this keeps happening. And this is one of the things we hate talking about. Because any manager admitting to this admits he really is powerless. But that's what's out there. Now let's talk about one of my favorite industries, franchising. It's a great industry, but also a great example of a major ethical hazard in business, information asymmetry. When I started this presentation, I told you I'll be an ethical salesman, which is I'll tell you upfront what my objective is. I will not make use of my advanced information about the presentation to keep you in the dark about my objectives. Okay? Because I knew much more about tonight than all of you knew, right? Because I prepared. I decided what to say and what not to say. And I tried to come across and say I'm not taking advantage of it. This is, information asymmetry is a major issue in sales, marketing, financial services. All those situations where there is complexity involved and the customer has limited ability to understand fully what is proposed by the seller. In the case of franchising, this is even strengthened by the fact that franchising contracts are really long-term contracts. So what do we have here? We have a lovely shootout. The franchisor, he has big, wide open eyes because he knows everything about his brand and his system. And his gun is straight, it's working. He knows exactly where to shoot. The franchisee, well, his eyes are tied and his gun is turned around. You know he's going to lose this shootout. There is no story here. And this was my situation. I sold big franchising contracts, 5 to 20 million contracts, 20 to 150 store development contracts. And if I sold many, I got to the podium and got a prize from the CEO. If I didn't, I didn't. And my bonus was very different at the end of the year. And my stock options would change, right? They could double, triple. So this was very relevant for me. Am I using information asymmetry to my advantage or not? The temptation is huge, particularly in those organizations where the franchising sale organization is separate from the operational part. So I sell the franchise to Christoph, and then Hani is the manager who manages Christoph. And he will bitch and moan about how Christoph was told things that are not true. And therefore Christoph is frustrating for Hani because Christoph says, hey, they told me it was easy and I'm making a lot of money and you're telling me it's hard work and I can only make 12% profit? That's not fair, right? So franchising is a classic example of information asymmetry. There are others. Banks are under scrutiny for their abuse of information asymmetry. This is a huge issue. Internet has helped a lot here. Okay? A lot of people perceive TripAdvisor as a way to handle information asymmetry between hotels and hotel guests. Okay? And now I'm going to touch upon something that's not really discussed in our industry yet. It's out there, lingering. And I bet it's going to come. We sell drugs. Let me repeat it. We sell drugs. They're almost as bad as cokes, cracks, or marijuana. We do. I do. We sell drugs. And we haven't really dealt with the ethical problem of it, because we're selling addictive products which are deeply unhealthy. There is a generation growing up in the US, they're 10 to 16, and it's the first generation in the US history who's going to have a lower life expectancy than their parents. They're going to die sooner than their parents. And it's our fault, nobody else, because we sell French fries. Blame the fries, no, blame the French. That's easy, right? For the Americans among us, huh? I call myself American because I spent so much time there. I love the country. French fries are deeply addictive. We are wired for salt, fat. French fries combined. How many of you can resist this? Oh, heroes. After 5 days of not eating anything, you will not resist. Trust me. I make a simple example. I have in my menu 10 options between exciting salads and vegetable plates, and only 2 fried dishes, hidden, tucked away, just because I know I cannot take them out. I'm too much in an exposed location to do it. I would need to be in a niche location to do it. Those 2 fried items outsell all the exciting salads and vegetables. They still do. The only thing I can do is make sure the temperature is right and the frying is as light as possible. Or take the hard route and simply don't sell it. The other danger is sweets. Now also some woman is getting weaker. That's the other piece we are wired to. Chocolate and chocolate combined, so sweets, sugar combined with fat, like here with the milk. That's spectacular. You know? Salt and sugar for a long time were worth their weight in gold. The name celery comes from the word salt. Okay? We have fought wars for sugar. Bringing sugarcane to Madeira made Portugal a world power. They had a cash machine. And so the French and the English sought other places where to plant sugar. We have invented slavery in America to grow sugar because Europe couldn't get enough sugar. In the 1600s, show me your teeth, madam, sorry. Wonderful teeth. In the 1600s, those would have been ugly. Beautiful teeth were black, because black teeth meant you had consumed a lot of sugar, and it means you could afford it. Huh? Now, white teeth means you can afford good medication. So, but sugar is really with us since a while. Salt and fat too, they're addictive and very unhealthy. Now that we switch gears from a society of scarcity to a society of plenty, which is, by the way, part of our success as business people. That's why we're listened to so much, right? Usually lessons were given only by priests, not by business people. Huh? Something changed. But since we've been so successful, this has become an issue. And this is an issue, a classic moral issue. It's the same issue for the tobacco companies, for the alcohol, beer companies, super alcoholics. Where does personal responsibility stop? Where does social responsibility start? Is it just your responsibility to choose whether to buy or not the fries? Or am I putting in your way too big of a temptation? We know by neuroscience that we get tremendous positive feedback every time we eat something like I showed you. So how can I expect people to resist that? Tough. And also they have an addictive value in the sense that the more you eat, the more you crave them. It's really true. Try staying off chocolate for 3 weeks. You all of a sudden start not to miss it. Start eating chocolate every night, a few chunks, and if one night you skip it, you really miss it. Okay? First year at Cornell, my fiance was in Italy. I was the greatest consumer of Nutella. Okay? And that was the reason I could persuade her to come to Cornell with me, which was good. But this is a classic issue of personal and social responsibility. Christian?
What is your view on the smoking ban as a restaurateur? Is it personal responsibility or social responsibility?
That was a decision that was taken away from us. It was decided at the state level. Now, I think you're referring to Germany or general, because it's being decided on different grounds in different countries. In the US and in Italy, it has been decided for the protection of the consumer, of the customer. In Germany, it has been decided on the grounds of the protection for the worker. It's all about passive smoke. You know, when blanket laws come in and they're actually executed, they have a neutral effect on business in reality, because they affect everybody in the same way, pretty much. Yes, some niches might get an advantage over others, some advantages might shift, but in the broad picture, but that's a classic case where we've decided we have a social responsibility towards smoke. It's no longer just a personal choice, because the expenses, the medical expenses of the consequences are unbearable for society, and we want to go to the root of the problem. We haven't taken the bold step of just saying it's illegal, full stop, like cokes, marijuana, and other things. Perhaps also because we are so ineffective at avoiding cokes, marijuana, and other things consumption, despite them being illegal. That might be one of the reasons. Socially, it's still accepted to a certain extent. But this is a classic example, Christian, of how difficult it is to make clear-cut calls. The complexity, I told you. I'm less concerned about that, honestly, because it's decided and done. So move over. I'm more concerned about those issues which are open, out there. We have to deal with it. I don't have any longer to decide whether it's moral or immoral to allow some customers to smoke close to people who don't smoke. That's no longer a decision I have to make. So from my point of view, I move on. And I focus on those decisions. Because those are decisions I still have to make. So, am I going to kick out French fries and cotoletta milanese from my menu next year, yes or no? Okay? So I put my conscience to rest in the last years by tucking them away, hiking up the price, and making salads and vegetables more attractive. How much more am I going to put it to quiet? I don't know. Those are hard individual calls. And in fact, this brings me to the end, and actually to something which was at the core of my presentation the whole time. Does some of you recognize this gentleman? Yeah?
Forgot his name, but yeah, it's like two-faced dude with one face is like good, the other face is evil.
You see, that's a misinterpretation. But it's true, that's the way it's often Janus. Janus is a god, a Roman god, and it's one of the very few gods which are exclusively Romans. You don't find them among the Greeks, okay? A lot of gods were shared between Romans and Greeks. This was just a Roman god, and it was really beloved.
Isn't it, I just want to guess if I'm right.
Sorry?
Isn't it like the one that basically the one half possesses something from the other half, and they somehow like...
Let me tell you.
Okay.
Let me tell you, probably it's easier at this point. Because what your colleague raised is just a typical modern misinterpretation of Janus. It was hard for me to find this picture, with both halves being exactly the same. Some differences in the bear, but no difference in color. Most representations today, if you Google Janus, Janus, you'll get one face dark and one light. One is good, the other is evil. It's a yin-yang interpretation, doesn't work. That's not what the Romans meant it for. Janus for the Romans was the god of creation. He was the original god. And he was represented with a head having two faces. one looking forward, one back. And it was the God protecting the moment when things are decided and created, where things begin and change. That's why it was the God typically present on doors, when you would enter or exit houses. You know, moments of passage, gates, inside of the city, inside your life. So big ethical decisions are like gates in your life. You will see that when you get yourself the courage to take tough decisions, you change not only the world around yourself, but even yourself. You then move to higher levels. So I wish for you to keep Janus in your mind. I hope he protects your passages in your decisions. I think I kept my promise. I didn't give you a model. I didn't tell you much about ethical theories, but I hope I made my point that you cannot escape those questions. Hiding is not an option. Stand up to decisions, be a business person, take decisions. Thank you. Of course, here I am for questions. Christoph, go ahead.
If, as you say, sugar and other elements of today's diet are in fact evil and can cause terrific costs for society, diabetes, obesity being sort of the minimal parts, should government eventually, like smoking, take a part in this, or is it strictly just a business decision?
You see, this is an area where you can really shape things and qualify yourself. So right now there is no consensus about government stepping in. Denmark tried. They tried to put a tax on high fat and high sugar products. Denmark has a tremendous consumption of those. That's probably why Danish people are so happy, actually. They are the happiest on earth. But it didn't work. It unleashed a tremendous protest. People say it's my choice. And if I get diabetes, okay, but I pay into the social system. I want my my healthcare. So it didn't really work. Some entrepreneurs in our industry are taking this as an opportunity to lead. So they're offering menus and items and products that take you away from those flavors. Okay? And, slow food movement is a whole way to go in that direction. They took the lead. They put together topics of sustainability, which is another big ethical principle now. Just 20 years ago, sustainability in terms of ecological sustainability was not even perceived as a normative ethical principle. Now it might be, it might become. It's back and forth. They wrapped it together with health issues, and they offered a lot of alternatives. From a business point of view, this, the ability to say, I go directly against fries and fried products and high fat and high sugar sweets is a tactic that can work in our industry, in the food service industry, particularly if you play in the higher end and in the niches. Niches could be also mid-market, but typically it's tough, for example, if you're in very prominent high traffic locations, because you're talking to too broad of a segment. But as these players, niche players, get segments to convert to their positioning, even broader businesses who speak to a broader mass will incorporate more and more health food options. So salads and vegetables are much more predominant in menus nowadays than just 20 years ago. So as in many issues, there are going to be steps forward, steps backwards. I think it's an opportunity for some entrepreneurs to really profile themselves. Every time market can actually solve. I would love to know what I'm saying so funny, I would really, you tell me afterwards, because I want to laugh too. Every time markets solve a problem by themselves, by internal energy, we as business people are going to gain in credibility. Every time we require regulation to step in, we're giving away a degree of freedom. Remember, we businesses, we're good at establishing trust. And every time we take initiative on these issues, we're going to build even more trust. In the last years, since the Lehman Brothers scandal, we businesses generally have lost credibility. Banks, first and foremost. But general business is in disrepute. Because we've been cheating, we've been abusing information, and on top of that, we're no longer delivering profits and labor. We're not creating work, we're not creating growth, we're a disappointment. And that's the pressure that businesses are under. And if you're graduating this or next year, you're coming out in a market where it's not fun to be a manager or an entrepreneur. When I graduated in '99, businesses and business people, we were the king of the universe. Internet was happening, we were changing the world, we could solve everything. And we burned a lot of that trust. We enjoyed tremendous trust and we burned it. There are phases when you lose trust, and that calls in for regulation, and phases where you regain it. Good ethical decisions help regaining trust. So here I'm already starting to give away some of the modeling I had promised not to say. Good question, Christoph. You want the microphone?
No, I think you can hear me. Do you?
Yeah.
All right. What would you say was the biggest ethical decision you were confronted with during your career? Thanks.
Biggest. It's tough because you build from one to the other. So the first one feels very big at the beginning, and then looking back, you say, well, it's kind of natural. And sometimes I went the right turn and sometimes the wrong. So disclosing it is really kind of personal. I might show also some of my failings. But certainly I was confronted with the information asymmetry in franchising. And I defended a lot a new organizational structure that was proposed and then implemented when I joined Dunkin' Brands, which was franchising sales and franchising operations go under one executive. We create integrated business units. You sell the franchise contract, you're going to handle also the franchisee. That creates a powerful incentive to limit the abuse of information. Because if I tell you lies, I'm going to deal with that after the contract is signed. Okay? This meant that for a few years, we couldn't sign contracts, we didn't get bonuses. But the company was smart. For those years, set bonuses on other objectives. They understood that you needed to clean the pipeline of applications all the way to getting to those applicants that would actually appreciate what you did. And at some point, it flipped the other way. People in the industry would know that Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin-Robbins in Europe, in international business, would tell you things as they are. They would not give you any BS. Okay? They would not paint you the moon. They would tell you, these are the hard facts of the business. This is where the pain is coming in. And so all of a sudden we had the queue from applicants who were very serious and said, I don't want to lose time with all these franchising salespeople who promise me 20% cash flow, and then I have to go with lawsuits. Let's talk directly. And all of a sudden, we were signing big contracts. So in the end, it flipped. And that probably felt at the time as the biggest decision. Now I'm living and working in a country I deliberately left. I wanted to leave Italy. Okay? I wanted. And then my dad has the bad taste to just go away. Real bad taste. Apart from very hurtful. And, he would love being here today. His favorite part of job is training his own people. He would love this. My dad was the person that taught me the parable of the talents. Okay? But he going away meant I had to go back to Italy. I don't need to tell you much about Italy. It's a country with serious ethical issues. Okay, the Riva family, major player into the steel industry, has upgraded all their factories in Europe and in America to the highest standards. But for the factory in Italy, they chose to pay 2 million in bribes over 10 years to keep it at standards which are below law and make sure nobody checks and controls. As a result, the community around that factory has the highest cancer rate in all of Italy. Now they are behind bars. Okay? So these same people, they were extremely ethical in the rest of Europe. Their factories are phenomenal, are an example for ThyssenKrupp. They're better than ThyssenKrupp. And in Italy, they behave like that. Let's talk about ThyssenKrupp. The only factory where ThyssenKrupp didn't care about security standards, in Turin. Burnt. 15 employees burnt alive. So this tells you there is an ethical issue in this country. There are challenges. It's tough to implement principles. So probably my toughest decisions are still ahead. Anybody else? Christian?
Students are gonna hate me. Actually, I'm gonna be here next week, I think, for the lecture. I'm sorry, but I have one question I have to ask you. Corporate social responsibility seems to be a very fashionable buzzword nowadays. So the question to the scholar in ethics, does ethical behavior, ethical action become unethical if it serves to distract from unethical behavior? Which I see is the thing about corporate social responsibility in many cases.
There is one reason why I didn't even go for the buzzword CSR. If I would answer this way, Christian, and I don't hate you for the question, it's a lovely question. But that's exactly one of the questions that have brought me to find my personal mentor on issues of business ethics and find a place which I also support with my own charitable work. Because this person in this place deals exactly with that problem. You might have great CSR programs, but if the core of your business is unethical, it doesn't help. You first need to make sure that the core of your business is ethical, or at least mostly ethical. Okay, I'm a realist, so mostly ethical would be already great. So that most, in our case, Duncan Brands, at that time, that most of your franchising contracts are signed without abusing information asymmetry. In my case, as an entrepreneur now, that most of my employees, for most of their work, are paid correctly, okay? If not all. Now, if the core of your business is ethical, then it makes sense also to have CSR programs on top. They can actually enhance you. And they will play to your strength. And then it's actually smart also to build CSR programs which have to do with your tough ethical choices. If you're a franchising business and you have proven that you're doing franchising in a different way, build your CSR around that, not around helping kindergartens. Play around your strength. Okay? And then it becomes really an engine for profitability of your business because it keeps reinforcing the credibility, that cycle of trust. The more trust you have, the easier it is to step in and make business and grow. So I'm in a market where, I'll tell you here because we're in Austria, right? In Italy I couldn't tell you. I'm in a market where people come to me and ask me work and tell me, oh, the restaurant so-and-so paid me entirely black and paid me only €3 an hour. And I know it's true. Because the supplier would tell me restaurant so-and-so gets supplied under the table. He even buys supplies under the table. So compared to that, I have an easy job, right? It's easy then to be an attractive employer. even without having bonuses and perks. I just need to be honest, and I'm already an attractive employer. And I'm trying to play this to my strength. So on the other hand, I'm a bit abusing the system too, Christian. Why? Because I'm asking people to come to me to revert on flexible contracts more often than law allows. But for them it's good. They allow me a bit of more flexibility, but I'm paying them full price and they're getting their pension, while from the others they're not. Am I perfect? No. I'm probably 90% there, great. And I'm taking the advantage that my competitors are so ugly that right now I can attract the best people with that. I hope I answered to you in some way.
Thank you.
Something more?
I think we could keep talking forever.
Thank you so much for this.
Great insights. I think
Mit